So let me first introduce myself to all of you. This is Ashnat Kothari here. I'm a graduate in BSc Eco Honors. I have cleared 11 actual papers so far, and I'm still preparing for my other exams to complete my fellowship. I have been teaching since 2016 when I was second year in my college. So it has been more than 6 years now from when I have been teaching actuarial science professionally. Along with that, I also have close to 1.5 years of experience working in a corporate setup in general insurance domain. So that was just a brief background regarding me. So in today's session, what we are going to discuss is about actuarial science. What is actuarial science? That is the key question. Why actuarial science is another question which a lot of you who are thinking to pursue actuarial science might have. What's the curriculum? What are its the various industries which employ candidates who are preparing for actuarial science and so on. So we'll try to cover a lot of things. To begin with, we would be focusing more about what exactly actuarial science is, what we all need to study, and so on. And then as we progress towards the session, I would be getting into the more specifics of the examination pattern and all. But before that, the focus would remain as in what exactly actuarial science is all about. So before I start, from my end, any one of you, especially ones who haven't started preparing for actuarial science and are thinking, if you could let me know through chat box what is your prior information or what comes to your mind when you hear the term actuarial science. Be completely frank, whatever comes to your mind, the first thing which comes to your mind when you hear about actuarial science. So one of you is mentioning insurance. That's fine, yes. Risk management, statistics, okay. Okay. Others, please feel free to respond. Let's make it a interactive session so that you all don't get bored. And I'm speaking continuously for the next hour or two or so. So what else comes to your mind? Let's see, even the ones who are pursuing, maybe when you heard the term actuarial science, whenever, what was the first thing which came to your mind? Finance. Okay, one of you is mentioning finance. Okay. So again, I wouldn't say there is any standard way to define actuarial science, what exactly it is. The way I would like to describe it at a very, very high level is it is ultimately to do with risk management. And there are certain pillars to that. When I talk about risk management, there are various forms of risks. So I will also try to briefly describe what all sort of risks are there, and how by virtue of preparing for this course or by preparing certain papers in this course, you do get the tools or the skills to be able to understand a lot more about risk management and to be able to apply in practical or in real life as well. All these let's say concepts or knowledge you study by virtue of pursuing actuarial science. So just confirm me once if my screen is visible to all of you. With the heading, what is actuarial science? Just confirm me once. Perfect. Okay. So actuarial science is the discipline that applies mathematical and statistical methods to assess risk in insurance, finance, and other industries and professions. So at a very high level, yes, it is about risk management. And if you would remember, or if you would try to think about it, risk is something which is existent everywhere. Whatever field you are in, be it business, even if you're pursuing a job, you talk about investments, you talk about anything, risk is inherently present everywhere. So when we talk about the application, I mean, technically there is no end to where you can apply your actuarial science skills. So at a very high level, yes, it is about risk management, wherein professionals who are actuarial science professionals, they need to apply various mathematical and statistical methods. Again, along with that, they do need to have a idea regarding, let's say, the finance or the accounting laws of the particular country, the general economic environment. They need to be skillful with modeling techniques on various softwares. So it's just not maths and statistics, with a lot of which a lot of you might have in mind. There are various other subjects as well which we do cover. But yes, at a very high level, this is one way in which we could describe actuarial science. So as you'll see this particular thing, identify, review, control, evaluate. So how I would like to explain actuarial science, I will say it is risk management, and within that we, let's say, have three pillars. First thing I would say is the identification of risk. That's the first pillar. So be in whatever setup you are, whether you are in an insurance setup or any setup of your life, as a student, as a working professional, as a businessman, as a retiree, as an investor, everywhere there would be certain risks which you would be facing. Even as a student in school or in your university, I mean, you would be exposed to certain risks. So the first thing is we need to identify the risk. What risks could be there? And to take various examples from various lives, just to make us relate how closely this is to our real life, not something completely theoretical, completely bookish, but something which has real life applications as well. So if I begin with let's say a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, I mean, one of the risks which that individual might be facing is what if that particular individual doesn't study, come back home, and is not allowed to play sports or play games. So that is definitely, we could say, that is a risk. If the student doesn't complete his or her homework, he or she might not be allowed to play games with his or her friends. So that could be a risk for an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old. Another risk is if they are playing outside, specifically during a season where it's a transition taking place from, let's say, summer to monsoon or monsoon to winter, wherein the tendency to get ill is pretty higher. So one risk of going outside and playing outside sports is they might fall ill. So again, that is a risk. So for an 8 to 10-year-old, this could be there. For somebody who is, let's say, aged 15 years or 16 years, maybe at class 11 or at class 12, towards the end of their uh, education in school, I mean, the risks which they facing would be with respect to the choice of stream they might have taken. So depending on the schoolings, most of you might have to make that choice in class 11, whereas students from maybe outside India, they might have a different setup. So one risk could be with respect to the choice of stream you take or the choice of subjects you take. What if you take a particular set of subjects, but it doesn't work out in future? So that's a risk which you might be facing. For somebody who is in college, the risk could be with respect to what further skills to develop on, or what further professional courses to take up to devote that time. The risk being that you might take up a particular course, but by the time you have completed that, after a couple of years, it could be so that that particular skill is no more relevant in the industry, because it has been updated or replaced by the more upcoming skills. So that is one possible risk as such. For somebody who has graduated and let's say is working, the risk for them is what if they are, the company in which they are working, the company kind of shuts down or lays off employees, which is tending to happen right now in various parts of the world, that certain companies are laying off. So that is one risk which you as a professional employee might face. Somebody who has a business or a startup, I mean, the risks you face are something which will be more visual and a bit more massive, maybe compared to others. So there the risks could be your setup as a startup or as a business is not working that well. Your costs have been increasing, but you haven't been able to pass that on to your customers, and you might not be making sufficient profits, or even might be running into losses, or the growth which you had anticipated, you haven't experienced that in a startup or in your business. So this is one sort of risk which you might be facing. Then investment, it's a very big thing now, specifically I would say in India right now, given the tons of content being made available on various social channels like YouTube, maybe Instagram, LinkedIn, so on. There has been a lot of focus of people starting with their investment as early as possible, maybe as early as the age of 15, 16, 18, so on. So the risk there is what if you invest in a particular asset and you do not make sufficient returns, or you face losses in it. So this is another sort of risk. Along with that, in various other stages of your life, there would inherently be, things, or, there would be risks involved. What if you plan to switch a company? You plan to, leave one job and move to another job because you feel that your prospects to grow would be a lot more better. But that might not happen. That might not be the case. You might not like the work of a new company. You might not like the culture, or it's just that, I mean, could be due to any other reason. Against your expectation, you're not enjoying, you're not satisfied. So that also remains a risk. So risk is something which is going to be involved, or is going to be a part of a life at each and every stage of a life. So first pillar is identification of risk. Next pillar is quantification. Now, as professionals, we will try to quantify a lot of these risks in monetary terms. Some of them might not be possible or it might not be very straightforward, but a large amount of them, it would be, let's say, possible to try to quantify that. So, for example, the moment I'll talk about investment risks, things will start to becoming a bit more clear as to, quantification of it. Say you invest a certain amount, let's say 1,000 amount in whatever currency you invest, and say you are facing, and you feel that the maximum loss which you can face over the next 1 year is 10%. So basically 100 units is the risk you are facing. So here quantification becomes very easy. This is just an extremely simple example. In real life, there are a lot more complex scenarios where a lot of more complex techniques you need to apply to be able to quantify it. And this is where the technical expertise, which you gain by virtue of pursuing actuarial science, you can use that to be able to quantify it. Now, once you have been able to quantify that, next part is how to mitigate it. When I say mitigate means what are the various ways in which you can manage that risk. One possible way is you completely transfer the risk to some other entity. Insurance is basically the concept of transferring your own risk to another organization. Other ways could be, how you can develop systems or processes such that you inherently decrease the probability of that risk. Say if initially there was a 10% chance of the particular risk happening, maybe through certain processes or certain specific activities you undertake, you might have been able to decrease that to, let's say, 5%. So that is, maybe taking steps so as to reduce the likelihood. And then it could be altogether, let's say you do not pursue a particular decision itself, which might involve risk. So there are various ways in which you could, manage risk. It could either be transfer, it could be retaining the risk with yourself, but taking in certain steps so as to reduce its impact, whether in terms of probability or whether in terms of the, let's say, the financial amount, the financial loss it might cause. So three pillars: identification, quantification, and then finally mitigation. And this is something which is not only restricted towards insurance. Yes, insurance is an extremely key part, but this step is something which you might be able to apply in any field of your life. Quantification might be difficult, but other things, identification and mitigation, is something you might be able to apply in all fields, irrespective of your age, irrespective of your profession. That is something, which, let's say, unconsciously, or, without even realizing, we do encounter this each and every point of time. One another risk, could be, let's say, how do you want to travel? Should you take a cab or should you go by, let's say, a public transport? What if it rains? In case you're going by a public transport, you might get wet. So again, this is one possible risk which you might be facing while leaving your particular house. Using a public transport might be a bit cheaper, such as, say, a bus or a metro service. Apart from that, let's say if you end up using private cab, the cost might be a bit more higher, but at least you'll have the surety you're not gonna get drenched in the rain. So again, if you'll realize, risk is something which we are facing at each and every point of our life. And yes, by studying actuarial science, we would be having tools, wherein we can formally identify these, quantify these, and what are the next steps. Once you have identified the risk, now we will try to use it in a way so that it benefits us. When I say benefit, it could either be by pricing that risk, giving it to somebody else, and maybe trying to make a profit, or more so, how insurance company operates is they accept risk on your behalf, they charge a particular price for it, and they try to make a profit out of it. Other ways could be how you yourself can reduce the probability of that risk or the impact of it with respect to the amount, and that might help you to lead, let's say, a better life. So this is an actual science, at a, let's say, just to begin with. Again, the type of work which one might be involved is extremely vast. A lot of it is something which you might not be able to understand at this stage. Only once you start working, you might be able to appreciate or understand, what work you might be doing. So it's extremely extensive. So whatever I kind of explained, it's very at a very high level, and might I feel it is relevant for somebody who does not have any prior knowledge. Other than that, obviously, if you have been working and you might be more able to relate it to the work which you're doing, how actuarial science or the techniques which are covered in actuarial science might be relevant to you. There might be a lot of terms like pricing, reserving, capital modeling, reinsurance, so on. So those are at a very, let's say, a more technical level, not something which a common man who has no idea what actuarial science will be able to understand at this point of time. As you pursue further, or maybe as you read or try to watch a lot more content, you might be able to appreciate these technical terms as well, or technical jargons. But right now, I mean, risk management is something which you might keep in mind when thinking about actuarial science. Another thing before proceeding further, a lot of you might think because the term is actuarial science, it is related to science, let's say physics, chemistry, or biology. But no, it has nothing to do with them. So it's not actuarial science means only the students who have taken up science can do it. Students, we will shortly seeing that who all can pursue this course. So just one thing, it's not that key only if you have taken up science you would be able to pursue actuarial science. That is not the case, and it honestly it has nothing to do with physics, chemistry, or biology as such. Then the next thing is, who is an actuary? I mean, okay, we talked about there is a particular course wherein we study certain things, and by virtue of that, we might be in a position to manage risk. Right. Okay. Now, what exactly happens, after you become an actuary, or who is an actuary? So this is more on the lines, which I had right now described. An actuary would be somebody who would be trying to identify, quantify, and kind of mitigate. So actuaries are, let's say, experts in evaluating the likelihood of future events using numbers and past data. So yes, maths and stats are going to be a core of it, but as you progress higher in your career, there would be a lot of other skills which might be more relevant, instead of just using tons of mathematical and statistical tools. As you progress further in your career, it's more and more about being able to make business sense out of the numbers and be able to take a well-informed business decision, so that all the stakeholders are being able to achieve whatever they had, whether it be in the form of higher profits, whether it being in the form of providing social security to a lot of people, or any other aim which a particular organization or an individual might have. Next part is quantification, design creative ways to maybe reduce the likelihood of undesirable events. And obviously, before that, being able to first of all quantify, okay, if let's say this event happens, what could be the potential loss? Either a single amount, or rather more generally, a range. Okay, this could be the possible loss if this particular risk materializes. And next part is being able to decrease the impact of undesirable events, if at all they do occur. Next question you might have is, where do actuaries work exactly? We covered what actuarial science is, what an actuary does, where do they work? So again, at a very high level, and not restricting yourself to the conventional, not restricting yourself to conventional lines of work, which let's say a lot of our seniors or people in the past might have been working. Wherever there is money and risk, I would say, more so wherever there is risk, you would find that your actuarial skills could be put to use. Now there might be a certain concept wherein something being is referred to as core actuarial, not core actuarial. What I'm trying to focus is the knowledge which you gain by virtue of studying for your actuarial exams. You are in a position to apply them in a wide variety. Might not be conventional actuarial work, so-called whatever work is called conventional work, but it could be in various other streams. So typically, actuaries do tend to work in insurance. Again, when I talk about insurance, it's not about, let's say, insurance agents or claim agents. It's a lot more to do with specific professionals who are involved in setting up the product design of any insurance product, pricing of it, how much money the company anticipates to pay in future, how to calculate profits of it. In most businesses, calculating profit might be straightforward, but insurance is one industry where the calculation of profits is not that straightforward due to its different product design. Then investment banking, then consultancies, say the big fours like PwC, EY, Deloitte, KPMG. These also have actuarial teams, wherein they do employ actuarial resources, and they do get a lot of actuarial work as well. Then we have pension firms, public accounting firms, government agencies, even certain big organizations, let's say like Google or maybe TCS in India, Tata Consultancy Services, or Amazon, they might hire actuaries. So again, as I said, wherever there is risk, there is a scope for an actuary to add value. Whether a company recruits or not depends on their policies, on their risk management setup. But the point is that whatever knowledge you do gain out of preparing for actuarial science, you can probably apply it in any industry. Once you have a specific knowledge regarding an industry, let's say be it telecom sector, be it energy sector, be it insurance sector, be it any sector, healthcare, education, you might be able to contribute meaningfully through your actuarial knowledge. So these are the typical, let's say broad-based industries where actuaries tend to work. Apart from that, there are a lot of other ways. Obviously, having your own startup in the field of maybe education, where you are a professor or you are a private tutor or so. I mean, these are also possibly places where actuaries might work. So these are the places where actuaries typically work, and these are certain examples of companies. Specifically talking about India, like LIC, which is the biggest life insurance company in India and one of the biggest life insurers globally as well. We have HDFC Ergo, Willis Towers Watson, which has teams in various different countries. Goldman Sachs, investment banking and all. Deloitte, again a consultancy. Then we have Aon, KPMG, SBI General Insurance, Reliance, HDFC Life, so on. I mean, the list goes on. There will be out of tons of companies where an actuaries could work. Next thing, maybe to something pitch this course, why actuarial science, or for who it is. So before getting into why actuarial science, let me tell you who might be able to pursue actuarial science. As of now, anyone who knows English and knows basic concepts of maths, which might have been covered at your school level till class 12, you are in a position to start preparing for actuarial science exams. That is the bare necessity. Apart from that, there is no other necessity. Also keep in mind, even in case you haven't had maths in school level, you can still start it. I personally have had students who didn't have maths at class 11 and 12, yet they have started pursuing actuarial science and have made a decent progress, clearing 6 7 papers. So, or even few of them might have been become fellow actuaries. None to my knowledge as such, but at least in my knowledge, I have few students who didn't have maths. So it's just that if you have taken maths, studied at a school level, you already know the basics. If you haven't taken up, you might have to separately devote some time to get the basics right, and then you will be in a position to start preparing for your actual exams. So this is, I would say, one basic criteria to begin with who can pursue. Now, this is with just the basic criteria. Next question I might have is whether you should pursue actual science or not. A lot of you who are thinking after school level or after college, which professional career to take. Should I take actual science or not? It's a very common question which students come and ask me. So I will say there is no correct answer to it. I mean, it is honestly extremely specific to your case, what goals you have in life, what sort of skill sets you have, how much amount of time you can devote, how much academically inclined you are, so on and so forth. But again, just to start with a very generic advice, which a lot of you might be seeking is, if you have a general liking towards maths, a general liking towards being able to apply whatever you have studied, and as well as open to, let's say work using various softwares like Microsoft Excel, R programming, so on, because coding is something, or working on computer software is something which is going to be part of most of the job profiles. So you should think about, or you might think about starting with actuarial science. So key interest should be, you should be having an interest in maths. This does not reflect of how much you have scored in your examinations, whether you have scored a 60 out of 100 or a 99 out of 100. That doesn't mean whether you should or not. If you have an interest towards it, and if you feel that you can take up this particular course, keeping in mind all its, let's say, advantages as well as certain disadvantages which any course might have, then you might think about pursuing this course. So again, I mean, if you're again looking for an intellectually challenging degree, actuarial science could provide it, making a difference to numbers, real life applications with great impact. So this is the course for you. Next, again, one of the more strong reasons why I have an inclination or a extreme liking towards actuarial sciences, at least in my knowledge of whatever professional courses I've heard about, have researched about it, I haven't found any course as holistic and as vast as actuarial science. It's just not one specific field which you're studying, it's a variety of fields, and I feel a variety of critical fields which individuals should know to be able to, I would say, a good life. So be it stats, be it financial economics, be it finance, financial modeling, computer softwares, like to begin with a person, you should be able to perform certain mathematics, like basic mathematics, being able to calculate profit, loss, cost price, selling price, basic multiplication, addition. That is something which might help you in a day-to-day life as well, whether you're going to a grocery store, whether you're trying to judge where to buy the product from website A or website B. They might have various sort of discounts or offers going on. So I mean, that is where maths is there. I mean, some of you might not like it, but then maths is again something which is going to be an integral part of a life. Maybe not trigonometry or calculus and all, that might not be required in all the fields, but basic maths, calculative maths is something which would be required in whichever field you go, whether you are having a business or whether you are a professional. It is something you cannot escape from. Again, stats, basic stats, I personally feel is extremely important. It helps you to understand things a lot more better and make more informed rational decisions. Else we might have a perception by virtue of what we might have heard from our parents, our relatives, and because they have been doing this for a long time, you might think this makes sense, but ultimately rationally speaking, taking those decisions might not make sense. So if you know statistics, you might be able to appreciate that first of all, there is a concept called outlier. A lot of places, a lot of people might pitch let's say a lot of marketing advertisements you'll see is do this course and you might earn tons of money, and they might give you an example of person A or person B. So again, these are nothing but in statistics we call outliers. I mean, it's not something which most of the people would be doing, but very few people would be in those outliers. So once you have have basic grip about statistical concepts, you would be able to appreciate and I feel make more better informed decisions in your day-to-day life as well. Next part after maths and stats could be economics, basic demand and supply, being able to understand, or maybe certain things about the macroeconomics, what is GDP, what is inflation, what is interest rate, how these things are going to affect, whether the stock markets are expected to increase or decrease, do we expect a recession or not, so on. So these are basic economics again, which is going to help you again as a professional. If you're working in a job or even as a businessman, you need to understand these basic demands or basic terminologies regarding economics. You also need to be able to understand the psychology of your customer. If you are running a business, you need to very well understand the psychology of your customer, so that you are able to fulfill his or her needs, be able to sell your products, and obviously make a profit out of it. And even if you are performing a job, I mean, you need to understand how the job environment is right now, whether making a change is very risky or less risky. So at times when the hiring goes on, let's say the last year or so, at least in India, where there were massive opportunities coming up, especially I would say in the tech sector as well as actuarial sector, where a lot of them were switching jobs because of the great hikes they were getting. So this was because it was a booming market. Now when certain companies have started to lay off, or if we expect recession to hit the market, companies might be expected to reduce their costs, lay off certain employees, And in such times, leaving your current stable job for a new one might be a bit more riskier. Not saying it would be right or wrong, but it might be a bit more riskier just given the general economic background. So again, that is something which one needs to know. Computer modeling, or the computer softwares, that is something you need to know. I can't keep there is no end to describe the importance of being know how to work on Microsoft Excel, irrespective of whichever you feel you are working in. Understanding maybe how to create presentations, a lot of job entails that, or work on Microsoft Word, or more sophisticated softwares like R programming, Python, SQL. I mean, there are tons of them. So these are also required in quite a few of lives. In businesses directly you might not be doing this, but at a point of stage when you have reached a very big scale for your business, you would start employing resources who have an idea about these, because these tools help you to understand a lot of things which might not be directly uh, picturizable. Once you have that sort of data, you might be able to understand a lot of things, a lot of human psychology through this data, and using those make better informed business decisions as well. And communication, that remains probably the key part of it. Whichever line you are, whether you're personal or professional, communication plays a big part. So in actuaries, we have papers devoted to economics. I also missed out on finance and accounts. It's extremely important for you all to understand finance and accounts. You might be working very hard, earning lots of money, but if you do not know how to go about with its basic taxation, how to go about investing it, what sort of returns to expect, I mean, you might not be able to use that money productively. You might be earning large amounts yet not being able to save well, or be able to grow your money that well. So again, finance and accounts are something you should know. So in actuaries, we have papers specifically devoted towards economics, towards finance and accounts. Few papers do test on the mathematics and statistical ability as well. A few of them I would say is extremely basic, whether you want to pursue actuaries or not. I mean, the knowledge which we cover in certain papers is, I feel, all individuals should know, because those are, I feel, a necessity for let's say better living in day-to-day life. Computer softwares, again, it's a need. Being able to communicate well, whether it's written communication or oral communication, it remains a key aspect. Even in case your technical ability might not be that good, but if you're being able to communicate well, I mean, it helps a lot. So we have a specific paper in actuarial science where it is testing your, let's say, written communication skills. And we also have a specific paper which will be testing specifically on your skills to be able to work on Microsoft Excel, be able to model something better on Excel, be able to document the work so that somebody else refers to that work, he or she would be able to understand even in your absence. Or even if you want to look at a piece of work after a long time, you do not have to do everything right from the scratch. You can maybe look at the documentation of it and be able to understand what has been done, and why certain assumptions might have been taken, or what might be the methodologies used, so on. So I can't think of any other course which is as extensive as actuarial science. So even if you all do not end up completing all the examinations and becoming a fellow actuary, still by virtue of studying for first few papers itself, whether you clear or not, if you have studied well, you would have gained a lot of knowledge which will really help you in your day-to-day life. You might not become a fellow actuary in case you stop pursuing it midway. You might shift to some other course. You might start working in a family business, or you might start with your own business or startup. But whatever key things these initial few papers would be teaching you, I can tell you they're not going to do any harm, even if you change your field at any point of time in future. So that is the biggest, I mean, the pitching point I would use, whether academic or even non-academic pitching point is keep the skills, the knowledge, the ability to understand data and correctly infer it, which most of them are not able to. I mean, data is present everywhere around us, and we make so many common mistakes to, understand that data or even communicate the results of that data. So, by virtue of preparing for these, we would be tuned with so many concepts, so many knowledge, that we will understand, what are the common mistakes, which ones who maybe haven't studied this topic might make, or how companies might be playing on your emotions or on your psychology to make you spend more than what is required, and so on. So this remains the biggest pitch point. Keeping aside that you might have a wonderful professional career, even if you keep that aside, you want to pursue something totally different, to I would say actuarial science is one course. Specifically, the first few papers, if you do study it, it will really help you to make much better life decisions and probably lead a much happier and a peaceful life. Now coming to who all can study. So knowledge of basic calculus is required. I mean, once you start preparing for actual papers, leaving a couple of papers, these do not require knowledge of calculus and probability. Say the papers about economics, or let's say the paper about finance and accounts. Apart from that, the other papers will assume that students does have a basic knowledge of calculus, basic differentiation, basic integration, so on, basic probability, and a like for numbers. Because if you are investing or planning to invest so much time, you should have a general liking towards numbers, or at least even if you do not have a liking, you should be clear in your head, if you are going to devote substantial time towards this course, you must be getting an output out of it, which aligns with your goals, professional goals, personal goals, so on. Now, the key skills which you end up developing by studying actuarial science. First is a strong foundation in mathematics. Next, extremely important, I would say, analytical and problem solving skills. Learning one thing is something, being able to apply meaningfully in real life to be able to solve problems, whether your own problem, others' problem in a particular corporation setup. I mean, that remains the biggest advantage. Ability to communicate effectively. I mean, here actuaries tend to focus, given a lot of our interaction is with an audience, which is a non-technical audience who might not understand difficult words, referred to as jargons. It is important for us to be able to communicate technical results, maybe in a way which our audience would be able to understand. Our audience could be somebody who has no knowledge about anything of insurance or any terminologies regarding investment, or it could be even somebody like a board of director. So depending on our audience, we need to be able to communicate effectively, keeping in mind what my audience could understand or not. So right now, if I had started this session with saying, actuaries are involved in pricing, reserving, capital modeling, reinsurance, product designing, business planning, a lot of you, the ones who are just, let's say, out of school or maybe in your undergraduation and not working, you might have lost me that place itself. But for ones who are currently working in actual setup, or have studied for certain papers, they might be able to more relate to what I'm speaking. So it is important to understand regarding what your audience, what prior knowledge your audience has, and then how to effectively communicate what you're trying to. Obviously, the way I'm communicating you all will be very different from the way I communicate with somebody who's more experienced or has more experience in actual science. The discussion might be a lot more different, or at least the way I go about talking, or this my choice of words could be extremely different. So again, this is one I would say ability which is required in your life as well. Whenever dealing with crisis situations or dealing with any other individuals, you should know how to be able to communicate effectively. Good situation, bad situation, you do know how to work around it, so that it's a win-win situation for everyone. And then finally, strong computing skills. Given the current curriculum we have, a lot of focus is there on your ability to apply the concepts, the core concepts, using computer softwares as well. So these are the key skills, by virtue of pursuing the entire course. And I should say, by maybe pursuing the first few papers itself, you would have developed a lot of these key skills, which will not only help you in your professional actual career, but even any other career choice you take, it would be helping you. So this was, more about actuarial science. I The next phase will be, where we go on a bit more specifics about the course. I mean, how to give examinations, how many examinations are there, duration of examinations, and so on. A lot more specific. So before I get into that, any questions you would want to ask, feel free to do that. I'll just maybe take a couple of minutes to address any questions you might have asked so far. So feel free to ask. You can use chat box for same, and then later we can get into the more specifics regarding our course. Don't hesitate, please, to ask any question you might have. Feel absolutely free. If you have any concerns, any queries, any doubts, or anything you might have heard about actual science which you feel what I am speaking about contradicts that, feel free to ask that. How does actually compare to with CFA or FRM? I will come to that. So we have a separate slide on that later on. How it is compatible. I mean, so it will have various levels of answer. One could be with respect to its course structure. Next thing could be with the skills or the type of industry you might be working in, whether a particular job role or even a business role will require the skills of both these courses or not. So that is something I'll come to it slightly later. One of you has the question is, I had business mathematics in my high school that had basic maths and determination. Haven't learned anything about calculus and integration. Is it possible to continue with actuary? Yes, it is absolutely possible to continue with actuary. You'll have to put in some effort. Maybe take class 11 or class 12 maths book or any other book which might have calculus. You might have to study through it. There are tons of resources available on YouTube itself. You might hire a teacher who might be able to teach you about calculus in a very short span of time. You might take a look at YouTube videos for same. There are a lot of content, a lot of useful content available. So you'll have to maybe self study for these topics. Once you have had basic idea about this, you can very well start and pursuing actual papers. And even there are certain papers which you might be in a position to pursue right now, even if you do not know calculus. Maybe a paper on economics or a paper on business accounts and finance. Irrespective whether you've studied them beforehand or not, you can start preparing for this paper. Yes, absolutely. It is possible to start papers which do not have maths and continue after clearing few papers. That is one possibility. Whether it is advisable or not, again, I would not want to give a general advice. I will try to keep it more specific to your circumstances given your education and other background. So it is possible. Whether you should do it or not is a different thing. I would be able to answer that only once I have more information regarding her background. But yes, somebody who doesn't have maths in class 11 and 12 can definitely start giving actual papers. How much time on average it takes to become an associate and fellow? So I will address that question. A few of you might think, what does an associate or fellow mean? I might have used the term fellow so far. I haven't used associate. So shortly we would be seeing, given the structure of exams, we will see we have two levels of qualification. One is, let's say, the partial qualification, and the other is the complete actual qualification. And then we understand the terms of associate fellow. The average time based on historical 10-20 years back, maybe based on last 3-4 years going forward, given the curriculum, it might be there. So I will be addressing that question as well. Apart from that, I'm trying to more focus any ideas or any things you might have had about actuarial science, which you would like to ask, or which you feel what I've talked about is a slightly different from what you might have expected before coming to this session. Anything on those lines? Or even ones let's say who have started pursuing actuarial science, but by attending this session you came across something which you probably didn't know earlier. I mean, feel free to share that as well. Will just help me to understand how much you all know about the course or not, so on. Okay, so one of you is saying that you are working for an individual who lives in United States and who is probably a fellow actuary, and you do know about it, and so you find it interesting. That's pretty nice. So just to give you my own experience, the first time I had heard about actuarial science was in the year 2014. I had my class 12 boards in the month of March or April, and in January, one of my relatives did happen to come and say, you might Ashnath, think about pursuing actuarial science. So I am also from a science background. I had taken up science in my 11 and 12. I was preparing for engineering entrance exams and all, but I didn't want to pursue engineering. My interest wasn't there as such, specifically in physics, chemistry, and all. So I was thinking, what else could I take? Because at least in my part of the world, most of them pursuing science, either you take up medical or you might be planning for engineering courses at least 6, 7, 8 years back. Right now, there are a lot of options. There is more awareness in the students, but that time it wasn't that much. So the first time I heard about it was then. I wasn't even able to pronounce, what exactly actuary or whatever the term one of my relatives had suggested. And the next time was once I had appeared for my board examinations as well as my entrance examination for competitive engineering, the engineering entrance examinations. I was pretty sure, I don't want to get into there. So I'm like, okay, I heard about this actually. Let me go and research about it. So that was the first time, when I went, tried to Google it, I didn't even get the spelling right. Then obviously there were certain results. I looked at certain websites of the institutes who are conducting examinations, and from there I got to know various things. And even when I started the course, it wasn't that I knew a lot of things about the course. All I knew was that yeah, it has a good scope, which people say, and they said you have a very much strong liking towards maths and all. So this is a course which you could be doing. It has a lot of, let's say, uh, it is something which is an let's say a particular course which might have a lot of value going in future. So you might think of doing it, but my key reason honestly was that it had maths and stats, which I know my relative or my people around told me, a couple of them, and that is how I started it. I started with a paper, I studied it, moved into the next paper, and from there obviously interacting with a lot of my peers, with my teachers, with other people around who are associated with this course. There was a lot of more information which we knew at when I started the course around 2015. Very few people were doing actuaries, honestly, at least in my part of the world. So there were not easy options to get more information regarding actuarial science. Right now, I would say a lot of you are privileged with respect to that. You will have a lot of people around you, a lot of content on YouTube as well. People talking about actuaries, what it is, different examinations, whether you should do it or not, so on. At least 8-10 years back, such information was not available that freely. So a lot of you have this question, when should I start pursuing actuarial science? Matlab, how much should you know? My idea is you just have to take that leap of faith once, and the best way to judge whether the course is right for you is not, you get into it, you study for one paper. The amount of time or financial resources you need to devote is not that substantial. I mean, try preparing for one paper. You like it, start preparing for the papers. You do not like it, leave the course midway. You'll never be at a loss, because even if you just study one paper, give the exam, clear it, give the exam, do not clear it, or do not give the exam. Just by virtue of studying the things which I've studied, it will be helping you a lot, whether you're pursuing any other professional course or even if you're not pursuing any other professional course. So one of you is sharing, just you started your actual journey, or started your actual journey because you had a liking towards maths and stats, and that is the case. So that's the very generic level. People can come and say, if you have a general liking towards maths and stats, then you might start doing it. Again, whether you would be able to eventually complete all or not, that's another different question. But yes, at a very basic level, instead of getting paralyzed by analyzing a lot, there's a common term called analysis paralysis. When you tend to analyze a lot, I mean, you end up making no decision. So at times, maybe just take a leap of faith. And I would say there is not much to lose. Start with a paper. I mean, instead of relying on what I am saying, what your friends are saying, what the seniors are saying, start with a course. You would be in a best position to judge, to see whether the course is meant for you or not, whether you like what you're doing or not, whether you find any value out of doing that or not, whether monetarily, non-monetarily, or in any other form. So one question which one of you is asking is, what could be the scope of an actuary in near future? In my head, like if you talk about scope in terms of compensation and all, I wouldn't comment. That might change anytime. It's good right now, but again, that good could be according to my definition. Your good could be something else. As per skills, as per value, as per the way people tend to look at actuaries, I would say it's extremely good. So, I mean, it is something, which one could take, which would help you to, make good progress in your professional life. But again, there is a certain amount of time which one needs to devote. So one needs to keep in mind whether they are in a position to do that or not, whether their academic, the way they go about their academics, does that suit this particular course or not. So there are a lot of other questions. Something, feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp personal chat itself. Whether actual science, starting with actual science could be correct for you or not. It is not something which I can say just on basis of one or two things. There will be 10 of questions, and maybe once you start even trying to answer that question yourself, you will be in a way better position to realize yourself whether you should be pursuing this course or not, giving its various advantages as well as disadvantages. I mean, nothing comes, there is no free lunch. You have to devote a lot of time, a lot of effort to gain something substantial. So whether you want to do that or not, it is something for you to decide whether you want that or not. Which has more scope, general insurance, life insurance? I'll take that question a bit later. So right now, let's move further into the session where we start talking about the curriculum structure. Now note that different countries have their own actual bodies. The focus of this session is going to be on primarily two actual bodies. One, Institute and Actuaries of India, which is based out of India, the local Indian Actuarial Institute. The second is Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, which is based out of London. Right. So these are the two institutes. Note that even if you are not based out of, let's say, India, you might be able to appear exams from Indian Institute, certain examinations. Even if you're not based out of London, you might be able to give exams from ifoa. So for Indian students, you can give exams from both of them. You do not need to travel to UK to give exams. The examination centers are here only. And right now, I will just also talk about the exams are online. So I mean, there is no physical center as well. You can give exams from any location as such. Apart from that, we have a very, I would say, big actual institutes with respect to the number of members they might have from USA, from Canada. But from the Indian perspective, I would say III and ifoa are the two institutes which you should think about pursuing your course from. And this is what I'm going to discuss going forward, the structure of these both institutes. So two institutes, as I talked about, one we use the short form is ifoa, which is, let's say, the London UK Institute in a very simple language, and another is III, the Indian Institute. Both currently, as of date, at the time of this session, have exactly the same syllabus. Number of papers, paper pattern slightly maybe differs, but the content, the core syllabus of each and every paper is exactly the same. So all this curriculum as of now is being devised by ifoa. III is using the syllabus which is being developed by ifoa through its various education partners. So as of today, the curriculum, the syllabus is same. So no, even our classes which we take, I mean, it's the same whether a student is appearing from ifoa or II. Most of the things, I mean, the content remains the same, just that the way exams are being conducted after COVID, the examination pattern that might slightly differ between the institutes, but the core syllabus remains exactly the same. Now, regarding the course pattern, again, this is as per the existing curriculum. So if anyone is watching this session at a later point of time, just keep in mind that this could change going in future, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 5 years down the line. This is something which is relevant as of date. So a student or an actuarial science aspirant needs to clear a total of 13 papers to become what we say is a fellow actuary, that is to attain complete qualification. So this is how the structure has been divided of the course, wherein first set of papers, core principles, these are the compulsory set of papers. We have 7 papers, CM1, CM2, CS1. So it is core mathematics 1, core mathematics 2, core statistics 1, core statistics 2. CB1 is core business 1, core business 2, core business 3. All these 7 papers are compulsory that a student needs to clear. Then the next 3 papers are CP, core practices, CP1, CP2, CP3. These 3 papers are also compulsory. So the first 10 papers are compulsory in nature. There is no fixed pattern to give the examination. There is no fixed way or order to give. There are multiple orders which students can take, which is something I'll discuss separately. So right now, these 10 papers are compulsory to be cleared. Post that, depending on the specialization of your work, like when you work in insurance, there is something called general insurance. There is something called life insurance. Then there is also something called pension fund. We also have investments. We also have risk management. We also have health insurance. So depending on your area where you're probably working, or probably where you want to work in the long term, you need to select 2 specialist papers accordingly. So you will see we have a total of 9 papers over here. SP1, SP2, SP4, SP5, SP6, SP7, SP10, SP9, 8 papers actually, not 9. So out of these, you need to select any 2 of your choice. You can give more than 2 papers as well. There is no nothing stopping you from that. But yes, you need to clear any 2 of them. And then again, Out of specialist advanced, there are 5 papers as of now, out of which you need to clear at least any one of them. So it is 7 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. Once you clear that, you have completed all the mandatory exams you need to clear for being eligible to become a fellow actuary. For the syllabus part, just to give you a very quick high level, CM1, I will say it starts with the concept of simple interest and compound interest. CM2 is about stocks, bonds, equity, derivatives, more to do with the financial markets, I could say. CS1 is basic stats, mean, median, mode, probability, so on. It builds upon that only. I mean, there are a lot of further things as well, but just to talk about in the language you will be able to understand right now. CS2 is again statistics, a more bit higher application of statistics. CB1 is business accounts and finance. CB2, sorry, business finance and accounts, rather I should say. CB2 is economics. CB3 is more to do with the actual code of conduct, I would say, and certain laws. It's a slightly different type of paper. CP1 is like the big paper about risk management. Right now, it has 39 chapters and it probably has the biggest syllabus out of all the papers. CP2 is to do with modeling using Microsoft Excel as well as documenting your work. CP3 is the paper I was talking about, your written communication, where you might be asked to write an email, a letter, a response to a policy holder or any other individual in the company, a report, anything like that, wherein you need to basically communicate your technical content to an appropriate audience, which might be which might be an audience who does not have a technical knowledge. Then in specialist papers, some papers are about life insurance, like SP5, SP6. These are based on finance and investment. SP7, SP8, both of these papers are on general insurance, where SP7 is on reserving, capital modeling. SP8 is on pricing. SP9 is on let's say risk management, enterprise risk management. SP4 is on, let's say, pensions. SP2 life insurance. SP1 health insurance. And then similarly SA1, SA2, SA3, SA4, SA7, these would either be on specialization in life insurance or health or pension or general or investment. So this is the course structure and the description at a very high level. I mean, there is a lot more to begin, once you get into a paper, but at a very high level, this is what we have in the paper. And we will see the initial 7 papers specifically. I mean, leaving maybe CB3, the other 6 papers, whatever you study, you will see those are something which you would encounter either when you're studying in an undergraduate course, studying for your bachelor's, be it any course, BSc in stats, eco, maths, or even computer science, or let's say BCom or BBA or a bachelor's in actuarial science itself, you will see a lot of similarities. If you take any other professional course like CFA, CA, FRM, so on, there would be a lot of similarity of content. And even if somebody plans to do an MBA in finance or so on, there will be a lot of similarity. So you will see the reason why I say is that there is no loss if you start with this course, sit for one paper, and then maybe discontinue pursuing this course, is because whatever you would have studied will be useful to you in your life as well as if you take up any other professional course as well. So this is the paper structure. Now, the technical way the route is, associateship refers to an individual who has cleared the first 10 papers and has 2 years of work experience. More technical way is 2 years of PPD. I mean, what is PPD? It is something, once you start working, then you should be focusing on. Right now, you can leave it. It's a bit more technical and more relevant to students who have, already started working in a corporate setup. So once a student has 2 years of actuarial work experience, let's say, and has cleared 10 papers, then he or she is set to attain associateship. And what the tag which they get is associate actuary. Depending whether they are taking from IAI or ifoa, they get to put certain initials after their name. So for example, if you have become an associate from Institute and Actuaries of India, so this is something which you might be able to write after your name. which is AIAI, Associate of Institute of Actuaries of India. If you become from, let's say, the UK institute, you might be able to write something like, say, AIA. If you become a fellow, you can write after your name FIAI or maybe FIA. If you're giving from certain other actuarial bodies based out of, say, a North American continent, you might be able to write something like FSA. So this is the basically the, let's say, the initial, not the initials, this is basically what you can write after your name once you have become a, let's say, a qualified actuary. Fellowship, to become a fellow actuary, you must have completed 13 papers and a total of 3 years of work experience. Let me categorically say it, it is not 2 years of work experience after clearing 10 papers. In actuarial journey, you clear certain papers generally when you are pursuing your undergraduation, or you might have started even when you are in school. Of late, students in class 11, class 12 have started pursuing this course. Like I have taught certain students in the last year or two, where they had started pursuing the course when they were in class 11 or class 12 itself. So point is, you can start maybe at class 11, 12, or once you start your undergraduation studies. And let's say after that, whenever you start working, maybe in college or post completion of a graduation, total 2 years of actual work experience you need. And the moment you clear the first 10 papers, you are eligible to apply for associateship. So this is total 2 years of work experience, not after 2 years experience after clearing 10 papers. So one thing which separates actuarial science course from any other courses, there is no need for you all to complete clearing all papers and then enter the job market. Otherwise, in most other places, you generally get a proper job once you have attained a particular degree. In actuaries, that is not the case. In fact, I guess everyone starts working before they attain the degree, because technically speaking, you can only attain the degree after relevant work experience. So I personally don't recall anyone who has cleared all the papers and then has started working. People start working depending, at what stage they have started with their actuarial science preparation. They might start working with 0 papers cleared. Some might start with 8 papers working cleared, so on. I started my corporate working when I had, let's say, 9 papers cleared, 9, or maybe I'd say 10 papers cleared. So it depends, at what stage of your life you're starting, how many papers you've cleared as of date, so on. So for fellowship, you need to clear these 13 papers and have a total of 3 years of actual work experience. Then it is said that you are a qualified actuary. One thing which I would like to state is, till the time you're not an associate or fellow, maybe try avoiding using terms in your social media or LinkedIn handles such as part qualified actuary, nearly qualified actuary. Technically, there are no such terms as per my knowledge, at least today, that the institute has come out with. You're a student actuary. Even if you are 40 years old, cleared 8 9 papers with 20 years of work experience, technically you are still a student actuary. So I would say, either you're a student actuary, or you're an associate, or you're an fellow. Using any other term is something my personally I would suggest not to use them. One of you is questioning is, after how many papers can we start working? So to give you an example, I know individuals or students who have started working even before clearing any actual papers. Again, these are exceptional cases, not the norm. Ideally, I will suggest for somebody who is either in class 11 or 12 in school, or somebody who is pursuing undergraduation, typically a 3-year course, I will suggest, if you're serious about pursuing actuarial science, at least at the time when you're preparing for these papers. Later on, obviously, your goals might change later on, but at least during your undergraduation, I will say target clearing anywhere between 6 to 8 papers. Even if somebody starts in first year of their college, I mean, you will have 6 attempts in 3 years time as per the current structure, and it is practically possible to clear 6 to 8 papers. I personally had cleared 8 papers by the time I graduated, and my students right now, I see a lot of them has even cleared 8 papers, 9 papers by the time they graduate. So that is possible, something, if you are regular and even little bit disciplined about your studies. It's all about being disciplined and regular. Post that, I mean, even if you are coming from an average intelligence, you would be in a position to understand the concepts well and be able to clear the paper with even decent marks. You can start working theoretically even after clearing 0 papers, but yeah, ideally Generally, if you see in the market, I mean, depending on companies, some companies prefer to select candidates who have cleared 6, 7, 8 papers. They have that criteria. Some companies have a minimum criteria of 3 or 4 actual examinations, and some companies prefer students who have cleared just 1 or 2 exams because they might not be offering that great compensation, or their work that might not be that good, or the growth prospects might not be that well. So they might want to recruit candidates who have cleared less number of papers, because in general they would have a less chance of switching companies after a year or two, because they have not made much progress with their actual examinations. What is the minimum time to become a fellow? So minimum time, theoretically speaking, is 3 years, because you need 3 years of work experience. So let's say you start pursuing actuarial science when you're working and you clear all the papers in 3 years, theoretically you become a actuary. That's the minimum time. What's the minimum time I have known? So recently one of my let's say students, or a friend, she recently became a fellow, and she's around the age of 23, so 24. So 6 years, she started preparing at the age in the first year. So 3 years of undergraduation, and post that 3 years of work experience, and she has completed all the papers. So 6 years, I would say. Again, this 6 years is because the first 3 years are not working. Thereafter 3 years you need to work. So 6 years is something, again. It depends, at what stage you are starting. I will say the ones who are starting during their undergraduation or during their school level, they might be able to complete in a lot more quicker time. They'll have, I would say, more chances to clear earlier compared to somebody who starts their journey when they are working. There is no age barrier. I personally, have sat examinations wherein people aged 60, 60 plus, are sitting beside me giving their exams. I myself have had the privilege of teaching people who are aged 40 plus, 50 plus, uh, pretty experienced in their own domain, say insurance domain and so on, and they are preparing for actuarial science. So the youngest who I know, personally, I might know, who has started pursuing actuarial sciences, a 16-year-old, or let's 17-year-old max, 16 or 17-year-old, and the highest age I might have taught is somewhere in the region of 40s or so. And I've seen people, I've sat with people, given my own exam, wherein a candidate age 60 or plus is sitting for the exam. So there is no age barrier as such as that. There is no age barrier as of now. There is no attempt barrier and nothing. Certain technicalities I'll get into, to start giving exams from a certain institute, what are the bare minimums. At a very general level, I'm saying there is not much criteria to start your actual journey with. One of you is asking is if somebody completed 4 or 5 papers and then takes a break before giving other papers, does it affect their career? I don't know. It might not. I can give my example. I started my actual journey in 2015, if I recall correctly. Uh, from 2015 to 2017, by the time I graduated in 2018. So till 2017, I had cleared 8 papers. This was as per the old curriculum. And then the next paper which I sat was in 2020. In between, I was completely focused on teaching. Like I have been even teaching currently, but yeah, those 3 years I wasn't giving any papers. Next, I gave in 2020 till 21. I cleared 3 papers, and the first corporate experience was in 2020 December. So technically speaking, I had a career break. I graduated in 2018. The first time I applied for a job was in 2020 October or so, and I got the job then. So it didn't affect me. Against few companies, they have certain standard policies where they prefer students who do not have any gap years, who have high marks in maths and English in class 10 and 12. They'll want you to start looking for a job immediately after graduation. So generally speaking, yes, it's preferable, but it's not that you would be unemployable if you have a career break or not. I mean, if you are able to justify why you had a career break or what you were doing, you would do it. Like when I was giving my own interview, I was able to justify, why I didn't take up a job earlier, or why I was taking a job at that point of time, given that, I have a pretty established education institute, and, still along with that, I want to do a full-time job. So as long as you can pitch yourself, give reasons to the person interviewing you, and if that person finds it reasonable, you will be hired. And ultimately the company is more interested to get its work done irrespective of your age or anything, so they might hire you. But yeah, I mean, certain companies might have certain preferences, or they might not hire any candidates with a career break or a break in their education or not having certain marks in 10 and 12. So there are certain companies, you will find all sort of companies everywhere. So I wouldn't say it's not possible, nor will I say it is very easy. I mean, these things, I mean, it's like if you're not a graduate, you might have a lot of difficulty getting a job, because right now, at least in India, most companies have an inclination that you must be a graduate. Not that if you're not a graduate, you won't get a job, but yes, it will be very difficult for you to get an actual job in the current setup. So again, these questions are, there are a lot of cases. I will not say ki, under any case, it's impossible for you to get a job. It's just that ki, if there are certain things which are a little bit unconventional compared to the current norms, you might have to put in a lot more effort and might have to wait a little bit more to get a relevant opportunity. Is it possible to study for exams while in job? Yes, in actuaries, you have to study, you're in job. If you talk about me, I was doing three things at a point of time. I was studying, I was working 8 9 hours 5 days a week. I was teaching on weekends, even on weekdays. I was doing three of them. So I mean, three of them, okay, could be a bit more, but yeah, I mean, with job you have to study. That is the case. In actuarial science, that is the biggest challenge, and that is why I ask students, if you are serious about your actual aspirations, clear, study as many papers as you can before you start with the job, because managing job, studies, work-life balance is way easier said than done. I mean, especially if you're going in a different city where you need to manage your own food, cleaning, everything, traveling time and all, it takes a lot of time. Along with that, every day you have to work for certain hours. At certain points of time, you would be working extended hours in your office, and still after that, you have to come back home, not relax, maybe not go out with your friends to chill, or maybe not watch movies or series, but come back and study every day. It is something which is very taxing. And if you have been regular with your studies, it's not a break. I will say it's easier. Other than that, from my own personal experience and from all other my colleagues, my juniors, my students, I see if you have lost that regularity, it becomes difficult. I mean, you need to have very strong incentive to study after a long gap. So I will say study as much as you can right now, because with job you'll have a lot of constraints. Right now, even at a school level, you might think I'll not study for a month, 1 month, then you'll study every day 8 10 hours, pull a all nighter, something like that. Point is, once you start working, you don't have that flexibility, because you need to devote a set number of hours to the job, and it could get extended at times of peak workload. Instead of usual 8 9 work hours, you might be working 10 12 14 hours as well. uh, some issues happening, I guess. Let me just check. Yes, so what I was discussing was, one of you have a doubt. I'm currently working as an engineer. Would you say, is it possible to transition into actuarial science? And would be your advice on how many exams I should write before I get a job as a student actuary? So, yes, it is possible for you to transition into actuarial science. As for how many exams you should do, it depends how many you can manage with your current job. I mean, there are various different steps you could take. You could be working in your current job, preparing for your exams. Then your progress might be a bit slow because you need to devote work towards your time as well. Another alternative option might be you leave your current job, focus just on giving actual exams. In that case, you might be able to clear more papers in the same time period. So see, it depends on a lot of circumstances, whether you are in a position to leave your current job or not, what other responsibilities or time commitments you have, how much amount of time you can give. Ideally, I would say, if one is in a position to devote full time towards actual science preparation, I would suggest that maybe clear, let's say, 3 4 papers in a year or so, and post that. Let's say you give 2 papers in the next session, you clear them, then you start preparing for 2 more papers, and post that it could be an ideal time for you to start looking into a job. Again, it's more to do which company you are applying in your specific case, or in your current location, how the company policies are, how open they are towards recruiting student actuaries, what are their minimum number of papers. So I am more aware of the Indian markets, not sure about the other markets, be it the African markets or Australian markets or UK markets. So that is something, I would say I'm not the best person to make a comment on that. You will have to kind of research about this, what policies are there, how the things work in your location, and then decide accordingly. Again, for these cases, feel free to get back to me later through personal chat. I might discuss this on a case-to-case specific basis, and give a more sort of an advice which might be more specific to you instead of all other viewers of this session. So this was regarding the path to attaining associateship or fellowship. Further, there is also something called a degree called CERA, CERA. If you clear the paper SP9, you are eligible to get another additional degree called CERA, which is over and above a fellow actuary or associate actuary. Like when I say over and above, it's not like after fellowship, next step is CERA. It's just that if you have cleared say SP9, you are eligible to get a degree of CERA as well. And if I'm not wrong, it's Certified Enterprise Risk Actuary, Sarah. I guess probably, I don't recall the full form, but I guess it's Certified Enterprise Risk Actuary. So that's an additional, let's say, degree you might get by virtue of clearing paper SP9. So this is regarding the examination structure. This is something which I like. What once you become an actuary, you will be cursed with knowledge about everything. Again, it's a bit of exaggeration. It's not that you know everything. Nobody knows everything, but you'll have a lot more knowledge. And I will just say, I'm like, life becomes a lot more easier if you know a lot of things. And it really helps you. It's not something which will have no real life application, something which you might have encountered at certain level of your education, be it at school or college, where at least in the Indian education system, we tend to learn a lot of things which we might not apply ever in our lives. We might find it completely redundant. With actuaries, that is not the case. Irrespective whether you become a fellow actuary or associate actuary or not, whether you do an actuarial job or not, even still, at least the first 6 papers or 7, 8 papers you study for, you will be able to utilize that knowledge in various other fields and also in your job. I'm saying also in a business. Like I also, if you would want to see my education, it might be a business. One could term it as that. I might have other side businesses as well. So whatever I have studied helps me, to make a more informed decisions. It's just that if I'm going to any other individual, maybe a bank for a loan or something, I know about a lot of things, and I know that they cannot fool me, or talk sweet things, and make me take decisions which might be detrimental to my own interest and might be beneficial to their interest. So it's just that it equips with your knowledge so that you can just take more informed, better decisions. Then moving forward, I'll come to one of your questions as well. So what's the next part to go forward? Right now from ifoa. From ifoa, exams are held twice in a year, in the month of April and in the month of September. So twice the exams are held from ifoa. From IAI, I mean, they are a bit inconsistent. Like this year, the exams were held in March. Next set of exams are in July. And then they have said that they are thinking to keep the examinations in December. So thrice. Otherwise, usually it was twice every year. Going forward, things might change. But as of date, IFOA, as per their communication, I don't see any changes. They might stick to April and September only for the usual examination sessions. So exams are held twice, I would say, most of the times a year, be it from any institute. So the thing which I was discussing was, different exams are held on different dates. You might sit for multiple papers as well. Currently in IFOA, there is no restriction on the number of papers you can sit in one session. Theoretically speaking, you can sit for 5, 6, 7 papers as well, as long as the dates of 2 papers are not clashing with each other. In II, you can sit for a maximum of 3 papers in a single session. So now, whether you sit for 3 or not is a different thing. Like when I started, I had cleared my first 3 papers, CT1, CT3, CT7. So these were the namings of papers according to old curriculum. Before 2019, we have a different curriculum. We had 15 papers instead of 13. So I had cleared 3 papers from II in my first session, in my first attempt from II. So again, if you have the question, is it possible? So it's like I have done it, and I'm not the only one. There are a lot of other individuals who have done it. I also have students, who have cleared 3 papers in a single sitting from ifoa. So yes, it is doable. It all depends on the regularity, your discipline of focus, and the time you can devote. So generally students sit for 1 or 2 papers. Usually 3 papers is something which might require a lot of time, which not all of you might be able to devote, because you might have other time constraints as well, be it studying for your university exams, or if you're working in a corporate setup, or any other personal commitments or responsibilities you might have. So theoretically, yes, you can do it. People have done it. I myself have cleared 3 papers. My students have done it, and a lot of other people have done it. So it's not that you need to be very intelligent or anything like that. All you need to be is very hardworking and being extremely disciplined. If you are that, I mean, you can clear 2 papers, 3 papers, any combination of papers. You'll find various individuals, clearing multiple set of papers at one go. So recently, one of my friends cleared 5 papers. I mean, 3 distinct papers, but 5 papers in a single attempt. So it is possible. It's just a matter of your commitment and your dedication. So it is possible. Whether you should do or not, I will say you are in a more better position to answer that. This is your own discipline, attitude, focus, and the amount of time you can devote. So now, generally, which paper should you start preparing for? Now, if first let me talk about ifoa. In ifoa, first of all, who is eligible? Even somebody, previously they had a class 12 pass out, but right now, even students who are in class 12 or in 11 can sit for the papers. Whether I recommend or not, it depends which paper you want to take, how strongly you want to start with actuaries. Other than that, usually, most of us will recommend you to start preparing for actual exams once in your in first year. But I will say, if you have researched, you or your parents or your relatives, the ones who are responsible for your, let's say, who advise you are responsible for your career decisions right now, if you are strongly inclined towards actual science, you might very well start it in 11 or 12. Just keep in mind, for certain papers, you need the knowledge of maths and all. So that is something you might have to study before it's being taught to you in school, or you'll have to plan it accordingly. Some arrangement needs to be made. If you're starting with an economics or a business finance paper, you might be in a position to give it without any prior knowledge, even in class 11 or class 12. Again, not something which I'm recommending to everyone. It is on a very specific basis. I will say only if you're very much inclined towards doing actual science and you have that knowledge in your class 11 and 12, then I will say, why waste time? Personally, I would say the amount of time I would have had in class 11 or 12 had I not been preparing for my entrance examinations. I mean, that is far more than what I had when I was preparing for my college examinations or when I was working and all. So the earlier you start, the more luxury of time you have. Later on, it keeps on decreasing. So yes, you can do it. You can start anytime, wherever you are, whoever is watching this session right now or later on YouTube. If you want to start, irrespective of your age, I'm assuming you are at least in class 11 or so, you are in a position to start from ifoa. Procedure for that is, you can either take membership, which has a one-time fee, membership fee. Once you have paid that, you become a member of ifoa. There is no other criteria as of today. No other criteria. Previously, couple of years back, there were criteria. As of today, there is no criteria. You just need to pay a amount to ifoa and you become a member. Once you become a member, you have complete freedom with respect to the paper you want to sit for, as well as the number of papers you have to sit for. If you do not want to take membership because it involves a reasonable one-time fee payment, you can sit your first paper as a non-member. This paper can either be CS1, which is statistics based, or CM1, which I will say is based on simple interest, compound interest. To begin with, once you have sit for this paper and say you have cleared it, then you have to take membership, which involves a payment of one-time membership fee, and then you can start giving any paper of your choice and multiple papers as well. As a non-member, you can just give one paper, either CM1 or CS1. So this is from ifoa. There is no other criteria. So it's like right now the next exams are in September 2022. So you can start preparing for that session as well, even right now. Next, we have IAI. Right now, you need to give ACET. It is compulsory for students. There are certain, let's say, exceptions where if a certain student has certain professional degrees, or there are certain cases wherein it's not mandatory for them to give ACET. they can directly start giving main exams from the institute. Else, for others, let's say any 12th pass out, I would say, you need to sit for ACET, which is Actuarial Common Entrance Test. So, which is the short form ACET. You need to give that. The current structure is it's a 100 marks examination. It is completely MCQ. It has no negative marking. And the pass marks as of date is 50. Before COVID, it was offline. Now it's online. Going forward, whether it will be online or offline, see, it depends. So I'm not discussing that in this specific video because that might change at different points of time. So you can refer to the website or our social handles to stay updated about the relevant or the current set of examination guidelines. So it basically tests you on maths, statistics, English, logical reasoning, and data interpretation, with bulk of the focus being on maths and statistics part. Once you clear ACET, post that you can start appearing for the main actual examinations. So the ACET, it was held, if I'm not wrong, yesterday itself. That is on 25th of June. Next ACET, I mean, one more ACET might be expected this year when, again, all these notifications are something which will be directly available on IIA website, or you might refer to our social media handles as well to stay updated regarding the next set of examinations, be it ACET or the main examinations. Now, which papers to start with? Again, generally we suggest CS1 or CM1, depending on the background. Some of you might start with a CB1 or CB2 as well. So it's more case specific. Usually, I will say somebody who is not sure about actuaries, who wants to know what actuaries is all about, preferably start with the CS1 or CM1. CS1 we generally suggest when the time remaining is, let's say, 3 to 4 months, or anything which is less than 4 months, we tend to suggest CS1. And if you have more than 4 months, then we might suggest CM1 as well. Again, it's a function of your own education background as well. If somebody is pursuing statistics honors, CS1 might be more relevant to that student. If somebody maybe has studied CM1 or has done any other studies which has concepts covered in CM1, they might start with this. Somebody could start with CB1, which is finance and accounts, or CB2 as well. So somebody who is say in class 11 or class 12 and is not very sure whether he or she will be able to understand the concepts of maths by themselves. So they might start with CB1 or CB2. So these are the generally first 4 papers which one could start with. Again, depending on your own academic background, time remaining towards examinations, the final decision needs to be made. 2 things: your academic background and the time remaining for exams, and obviously the time you can devote, keeping in mind your other time commitments. On that basis, you need to make a decision. So generally, otherwise, we'll see all others, my colleagues or us generally suggesting CS1 or CM1. But again, if you are unsure about it, whoever person you're taking advice for, make sure you are letting them know about your entire background, so that again you can make a more better, well-informed decision. Don't follow what others are doing, because what might be correct for somebody or might be appropriate for somebody might not be appropriate for you. So see your own circumstances, your maybe own abilities, if you are able to judge it, and accordingly take a call. Exam pattern, I'm not getting into it because these keeps changing due to online offline nature. So as and whenever you're planning to start with your actual curriculum, at that point of time, whatever is the current set, we'll let you all know. Other than that, I mean, what might be relevant for 2022 September or 2022 December might not be relevant for 2023 2024. So I'm avoiding that discussion in this particular session. Depending when you start, we will update you all regarding the current set of examination structure and all. Now, one of you was like, is it advisable to pursue actuarial science with CA, CFA, FRM, MBA? Depends what your career goals are. There is no harm in doing that, but yeah, you need to keep in mind how much time you can study. I personally prefer, whatever you study, even if you study a little, it should be sensible study, and you should know what you know, instead of having 3 degrees and not much ability to apply those knowledge. It might be better to have just 1 degree. Again, that's my personal opinion, not necessarily right or wrong. So you need to see, you want a lot of degrees, you could study them simultaneously. It is possible. I have had my friends, students, seniors who have done multiple courses like CA actuaries, CFA actuaries, FRM actuaries, or post actuaries. They completed their MBA, or post MBA they started with their actuaries. So it is possible, it is doable. Whether you should do or not is a different question. Again, depends on a lot of factors. Advantage is ki yes, why I suggest is ki if you are in right now a class 11 12 student, or just entering college, or even in first or second year, you can start with actual papers. CFA is something which, as per current guidelines, if I'm what I have remember around is, you can give it only in a third year of college. So the first 2 years are completely free. Even CAT is something which usually one gives towards the end of the second year, or maybe in the third year. That is the entrance examination for MBA in India. So the first 2 years are completely free. Why not utilize that time to develop your skills by virtue of studying for actual examinations? These will be complementing with CA, with CFA, with FRM, as well as MBA. Is one incomplete inferior to another? No, I wouldn't say that. It's not that actuarial science is superior to any other degree or any other degree is superior. It's more like, if you will say yes of all the courses, I will say actuarial science takes a lot more time, simply given the number of papers it has. And most importantly, you need to study while you are doing a job, which I feel is the toughest thing to do of all other things. All other courses, usually you will see people doing MBA full time, or CA, CFA, FRM. FRM has just 2 levels. So it's a very short course. So that way it's easier. Again, the content, some of you might find it challenging. CFA also currently has 3 levels. CA has a, let's say, a starting paper, CA foundation exam, I could say. Then there is IPCC intermediate, and there is CA final. So it's a 3 stage. Some of them can cover it in 3.5 years, 4 years. Some, if they take multiple attempts, they could take 6, 7, 8 years. But actuaries is something that you will take at least, I would say, 6 years if you're starting from a first year to become a fully qualified actuary. That is the bare minimum which most of you will take. Some of you will take even more than that. Some of you, very, very disciplined, very bright, very hardworking, might clear even in 4, 5 years. Again, work experience, you need 3 years. So if you ignore that, maybe the total number of papers you clear, you might clear it in 3, 4 years, theoretically speaking, depending how disciplined you are. So no course is inferior. Different courses test different thing. I will just say from my personal experience, I do have some idea regarding what all is taught in this other courses as well. Actuarial science is a way more holistic course because it has a lot of other contents as well compared to others. Others will be a lot more specialization. CA might be with respect to taxation, audit, even finance. I mean, obviously there are different subjects. CFA is a lot more to do with finance and all. FRM is more of financial risk management. MBA obviously depends whether you want to get. It's not a like it's kind of a, let's say, post graduation thing which a lot of you will do is, marketing, operations, finance, data analytics. So it depends. Nothing is inferior, nothing is superior. At certain point of time, you talk about compensation. Certain degrees might be getting more compensation at fresher level or at high experience level, and at certain different points of time, some other degree might be getting it. If you'll ask me, definitely, this is probably, in my experience of last 8 years, the best time to be in the actual science. Certain years I would say were very difficult, 2017, 2018, for actual freshers. But after COVID, right, probably from second half year of 2020 or so, I mean, the amount of opportunities which are coming for actual freshers has been tremendous. To an extent that I wouldn't exaggerate, there was a time where students used to come and they used to ask, Bhaiya, so jobs nahi mil raha hai. We want jobs, are looking for it. We have been struggling for a long time, maybe 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, not getting it even after clearing a lot of papers. I have seen that time personally, seen my friends struggling to get a fresher level job. And right now is a time where I need to literally go to students, drop them a WhatsApp, there is a job, are you interested or not? Because I mean, such is the opportunity right now. Going forward, it might decrease, it might increase. I mean, my understanding is that it has a pretty bright future given that our skills are being recognized and appreciated, and especially in the Indian context, I would say. Outside, I mean, there's a, you know, I mean, there are very few such skilled resources available, be it in American markets or European markets or Middle East, Asia, let's say Dubai and all. In India, given by the sheer population, I mean, there is a demand for it, but the supply is so much, it feels that there is no scope in this course. But that is something which is changing going forward, given the quantum of work which Indian companies are getting post COVID. A lot of work is coming from outside, given that we have demonstrated the skill set, or in this lockdown everyone did show the ability, we could work even at a while working from home. So countries from organizations from outside are giving the work. So it is more to do, I mean, the dynamics with respect to compensation, with respect to the value given might change from time to time. What might be there 3 years back might not be there 5 years back. 3 years back, 2018-19, I would say actuarial science for a fresher, it's difficult to get a job. So don't come in for the money. You might struggle. If you don't want to struggle, don't come in. Right now, I have students who are in third year of their college and they have a full-time job. I never thought your third year student would get a kind of a full-time job for an entire year or so, but companies are recruiting because such is the demand. Companies, consultancies, startups, they all are taking it. So again, I mean, right now it is going forward. I don't know what it will be, but the skill set which you'll have, I am sure it will be applicable 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line, or even 30 years down the line. For compensation, that varies depending on the time, depending how much you want. For somebody, some amount might be very small. For somebody else, it might be very large. So it depends on your own expectations, your own background as well. So this is this, you could think whether to do or not. From just academic point of view, you do multiple courses, you gain more knowledge out of it. It's good, but just doing multiple courses for the sake of having a degree before or after your name, I don't find that useful, because in the long run, I just feel as an when people get more educated, more wise, they know ki these degrees do not matter as such. I mean, obviously they do matter. It gives you a sort of a credibility or a respect, or for sort of a certification ki yes, you have completed this. But just by completing a degree with not knowing how, what to apply it, like that knowledge is not useful. Maybe you might get a job, initial job, but that growth which comes when you apply things in a job, it won't be there if you do not know how to apply whatever you have studied. So this is all, I would have, let's say, for this particular session. I hope you all did find this pretty interesting. I had tried to cover a lot. Just to conclude, if you're looking for, classes, or to begin your actuarial science journey, looking for quality classes or guidance, feel free to reach out to us. We have online classes, offline classes are also currently being held in Calcutta. We might start in different locations as well. So again, depending when you're viewing this video, do reach out to us to know, how we are conducting our classes. Currently, we have online, we have offline, we have pre-recorded lectures, video backups completely available, or D2H, whichever name you want to give. And we are currently, providing classes for these 7 papers: CM1, CM2, CS1, CS2, CB1, CB2, CP2. Along with that, we also do provide courses for certain data analytics courses, Excel, R programming, SQL, to name a few. And then finally, just a brief background. So it's 2 of us right now who are running Finatics. So Gunjan is my colleague. So this is just a brief background regarding us. As of date, in future, hopefully we'll have more papers to our name to have cleared for. So yeah, I mean, feel free. I mean, before joining, do definitely take a look at our videos, which we have uploaded on our YouTube channel. See if the way we go about our teaching makes sense to or not. And if you do like the way we go about with our teaching, or are being able to understand our content, I'm like, definitely take the leap of faith and, do join our classes, maybe for the first paper or so. And if you have a good experience, might continue further as well. So yeah, that was just regarding that. So thanks everyone for your time.